here we are. My name is Preston Jacobs, and I know you're all thinking, Benjen Stark. How can Preston have anything new to say about Benjen Stark and where Benjen could be? Where can he be? What can Preston possibly tell you about where Benjen is and him missing? Well, I want to talk about Benjen a little bit because in case you are searching the text for some sort of evidence on where Benjen is, where could he be? What does the text say? You're going to be thoroughly disappointed because the text not only says nothing, it contradicts itself on where Benjen Stark could be. It is very clear that through writing Game of Thrones and into Clash of Kings and on, George changed his mind about the North. He changed his mind about the geography of the North. He changed his mind about the plot. And so if you're looking for evidence on Benjen Stark, it's just not going to be there. It's not going to be there because you have a shifting environment. So let's start from the beginning. In the beginning, we know from George's outline that he published. So George wrote 13 chapters, went and did Doorways, wrote an outline of where he thought the story was going. This is where we get the story will be in 3 parts: War of the Five Kings, invasion of Dany, invasion of the others. In this outline, George specifically says that Jon Snow will become Lord Commander of the Night's Watch after his uncle. So in George's mind, after that first 13 chapters, when he was first writing, Benjen was never going to get lost. Benjen was just going to fucking die. And Jon Snow is going to become Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. There was no mystery of Benjen going off and doing some super secretive thing. Okay. And what's going to happen? No, he was just a dude who was going to die. Now, G.R. Mormont is mentioned fairly early. They call him, I will say that the Old Bear, is he mentioned in the prologue of a Game of Thrones? But it might be a transplant in there because you really don't get G.R. Mormont as a character until after the 13 chapter break. Jon heads to the Wall and they establish this kind of situation. But I think he's just called Old Bear in the prologue. Let me my search of Ice and Fire is being a little weird here. Yeah. They said Old Bear Mormont. But it's kind of telling that you're establishing Mormont as an old character who's going to die of old age, or natural causes, and then Benjen would be Lord Commander, and then Jon would come in and be Lord Commander after that. But nonetheless, in the very beginning, there was no idea in George's head about what Benjen was doing. It was not a fundamentally important part of the story to him. But things change. And so after the third, Jon 3 comes along, and in Jon 3, it mentions that Benjen has gone north of the Wall into the haunted forest. And then George kind of has this hiccup for a little bit in a Game of Thrones, writes slowly, but eventually comes back in Jon 4, and Benjen is missing. So, but this is kind of important about this, okay? Haunted forest, and it says Benjen goes missing in the Stony Highlands. That he had a mission to go into the haunted forest, and then his trail goes. He was marking trees, and then he kind of disappears around these Stony Highlands. Stony Highlands, by the way, never fucking mentioned again. We have no idea what the fucking Stony Highlands is. I guess today, like, we just assume, like, moving into the Frost Fangs is the Stony Highlands. But this is interesting because I want to take a look at the map of A Game of Thrones. Okay? This is our north of the wall situation here. Now, many people have forgotten what this map looks like because, you know, Game of Thrones map is not as detailed as later maps. And so you seldom look at the map from A Game of Thrones. But if you're looking at it, you see the haunted forest is fucking huge. It's the whole thing. It's the whole north of the wall seems to be haunted forest except for frozen shore. And this small little group of mountains here. So he says Stony Highlands to the northwest. So you assume somewhere in this kind of area, because he also says that like Castle Black and Shadow Tower people are searching for him. So if you're reading A Game of Thrones, you're like, well, I guess Benjen is missing somewhere in this little cluster of mountains. Now, Frostfangs as a concept does not come into the story until A Clash of Kings. And this is quite hilarious. Okay, I'm going to leave this little map here of A Game of Thrones. And this is what's absolutely hilarious. Okay. All right. And let's put these side by side. And you'll notice something wonderfully funny here. Okay. Now, out of fucking nowhere, George R. R. Martin has transformed a whole bunch of fucking forest into more mountains. And now we have Frostfangs. And this is where the Frostfangs are. And we hear about Mance Rayder, like, gathering people in the Frostfangs. This area that didn't fucking exist in A Game of Thrones, right? Never mentioned Frostfangs, not on the fucking map. We had Stony Highlands, but now we've got these fucking Frostfangs. And the Haunted Forest is still pretty big. But now let's go a little further in our story, and let's get to because, you know, once we get to ideas about like the Fist of the First Men and the geography of the North and stuff like this gets fleshed out in A Storm of Swords. And here's our north of the wall map. All right. So now the Haunted Forest has been thinned out and has been clearly pushed east. Now, the Frostfangs and all these highlands and everything have been pushed east. So now when you hear something like, oh, Benjen was leading a ranging into the Haunted Forest, it doesn't really fucking make sense, right? The Haunted Forest you kind of think is this big forest thing to the east, and these would be like mountains and hills to the west. And so now, like, the story of what he did, like leading somebody into the Haunted Forest, like, just doesn't seem to fit. But nonetheless, you could probably argue, okay, well, but close to the wall, that's all Haunted Forest, and then it just kind of goes east, and you're like, okay, fine. And now we have this whole new geography on everything. Fist of the First Man, and this is where we get Jon finding dragon glass things and stuff like that. But nonetheless, completely different geography from A Game of Thrones to A Storm of Swords. Now, just because George changed his mind doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't have an idea. But the problem here is it's very clear when he established the story, Benjen didn't have a role. And then when he had Benjen go missing, he had a different idea about the entire north of the wall, like everything, the geography, the people, where the others were. And so when people start making comments on like, what is the heart of winter and what is the land of always winter and the others and this geography and stuff like that, that was clearly not established when George decided to just make Benjen missing. right? And so it's pretty clear that this is something like George mystery boxed Benjen. It's very clear that when he created the mystery box of what happened to Benjen Stark, he had no idea what was inside himself. He J.J. Abrams it. And maybe he didn't think, the thing is if he were coming out with these books fast, it's not the big deal. Like Benjen missing is this, very small plot point that that's not that important. But the problem is that like now the books have been spaced out and now we've got years and years and years. And all of a sudden it becomes this like big mystery. The mystery box the longer a mystery box is around, the more you think like, well, what's in it? Because at first you're like, oh, what's in the mystery box? Maybe there's $100 in the mystery box. But then you're sitting around, well, if there's $100, maybe there's $1,000 in the mystery box. Oh, really? If there's $1,000, maybe there's $10,000 in the mystery box. And your mind keeps building it up. Oh, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So now we're at this situation where it's been so many years, 15 years since Dance, and it's literally been 30 years since Benjen went missing. Like Game of Thrones came out in 1996. It's been a long time, and the mystery is built, and you can search the text, and it doesn't matter because like the information that was given has been retconned. Everything's been changed and shifted around, and so now we're at this point where no matter what answer comes of what happened to Benjen Stark, it will never satisfy anyone. Our expectations for Benjen Stark are beyond what it could be. Because I mean, the simple answer is Benjen Stark was just fucking killed. I mean, his other two men came back as whites, and he fucking died too, and that was it. Like, and that would have been fine if the books came out fast. You've been like, oh yeah, Benjen just died. Oh, okay, that's fine. But now it's like, well, who's Benjen? And he's not Cold Hands. Oh my God. And it's not just us, because we know it's not just crazy fans. We know that his editor himself, the editor herself, when she was reading A Dance with Dragons, saw Cold Hands and asked in the margin, is this Benjen? Clearly, she thought that this Benjen Stark mystery had been building up for so long that when she sees something, she's like, oh my God, that's Benjen. So it's not just crazy fans, And that was in 2011, that was 2020, But people, that's the thing. There's a lot of videos on Benjen Stark. There's a lot of people ask me, like, where is Benjen? And the thing is like, he can, wherever he is, and it'll never satisfy you. You will never be satisfied with the answer. Like, imagine he's been turned into an undead magic monster, like in the show. Would you be happy with that response? Like, or would you think that was a bit silly? Let's say he's just dead. Wouldn't that be underwhelming? Say he shows up and he's Dario. Isn't that a little too crazy and out from left field? Like, no matter what answer you give for what happened to Benjen Stark, you will be disappointed. It will be because you've thought about it, you've built the mystery up, and now it's beyond your idea of what Benjen Stark could be is now beyond anything that could satisfy you. You've now thinking, oh my God, in the mystery box is $1 billion. And no, it's impossible that there's $1 billion in the mystery box. But like, we've all built it up in our heads. So that's my answer on Benjen. I mean, I hope that again, and this is disappointing for you. Like, oh my gosh, I wanted Preston to tell me where Benjen Stark is. And what I'm telling you is it's a mystery that will disappoint you no matter what it is. I mean, if anybody could give an answer that where someone's like, that's a really cool, appropriate level response that's surprising and would add something to the plot. The problem is, with Benjen as well, is we don't have any POV except for Bran that can possibly even find where Benjen would be and what would he see, how would it like he's flying around as a crow and then he sees Benjen and he observes something. He's a tree somewhere and he sees Benjen approach and do something. And then what? Benjen dies, or Benjen shows up at the wall, shows up south of the wall. And you'd just be like, well, this is fucking random. After all this time, he just fucking shows up. Like there's nothing that can possibly satisfy anyone. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, even the question, where is Benjen Stark? Like, you will be disappointed. You will be disappointed. You can't not be disappointed because it's very clear in the text that George had no idea. He had no idea where Benjen was. Maybe he does now, but he mystery boxed it, and that mystery box has gotten out of control. So, yeah. I mean, you're right. You could prologue Benjen, but what could happen to Benjen? That I've considered like different things where you're like, okay, I suppose finding out that time traveling Bran like purposely did something to kill Benjen, like that's pretty dark. But because he needed like the timeline to go a certain way, like that might work. But him showing up as a magical monster, is just going to seem silly. And him just showing up at the wall or south of the wall as a human being with all sorts of information is going to seem shoehorned and random. So I don't know. Like I said, I think like just him being dead and it being Bran's fault, some dark result or something is about the best he can do with where Benjen is. But even that, little underwhelming. You're like, oh, Benjen was dead the whole time? Oh, it was a mystery. Oh. Yeah. I mean, either that or he just gets like a cameo in the last fucking chapter of the book. Like, kind of like Dying of the Light. There's this character in Dying of the Light where everybody's wondering where he is the entire book. And at the end, he's just like there and he like draws a circle. He draws this like battle square. And they're like, oh yeah, it's you. Okay. And he doesn't say very much. And he's just kind of at the end, but you got to do that with Howland Reed too. So